Auburn traveling to Baton Rouge to take on LSU in a game with huge playoff implications.
These last couple of games have come down to the last play. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a great game. Home field advantage. I expect it to happen again. It's a winning edge.
They play good football. I mean, I just think about the last game when we went down there. I mean, that was a tough one to swallow right there.
First down and 10 at the 37. Burrow steps up in the pocket, feels the pressure, slings one down the middle of the field. Caught, over the shoulder catch, back of the end zone. Derek Dillon, touchdown, Tigers.
16 seconds in the fourth. Nix steps up, he throws to Williams. He's got it! Touchdown, Auburn!
Our guys respect Auburn. Our coaches respect Auburn. There's extra work being done in the office. This is going to be a great battle between some coaches.
What is good, streaming people? This is the SEC on CBS Super Preview with Auburn and LSU. Tommy Tran and Brady Quinn in our Fort Lauderdale studios here at CBS Sports HQ. And Brady, when you look at this game, how will the Auburn Tigers try to contain Joe Burrow and that really prolific offense for the other Tigers?
Good luck. Everyone's trying to answer that question right now. I mean, they're so balanced with their rushing attack, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and how they go about running the football and utilizing him, mixed in with Joe Burrow and just his precision within this offense in the passing game. They give you so many things you have to be concerned about. In particular, the thing that stands out to me is in the red zone, his accuracy, his timing. And he's able to find the matchup he wants, the soft spots in the zone coverage to exploit that, to find Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Marshall, who may not play in this game, but he's been a big piece of this offense as well this year. So far, I have a hard time believing Auburn's going to be able to fluster Joe Burrow because he's already played two other top 10 ranked teams on the road in Austin. You saw him versus Florida as well. I don't know that this Auburn team is going to put up too much else against him. I do think he's going to be able to have some tough moments at times. I don't think it comes in this matchup. I think it comes maybe in a few weeks versus that team down there in Tuscaloosa.
And as we see right now, north of 50 points per game. On the other side for Auburn, we talked about it already this year. The running back by committee had been led by Boobie Whitlow. He's been out with that knee injury. How have you evaluated how they've responded with the running back group?
It's kind of been by committee. You know, Cam Martin's taken over, and he's really been the guy to lead the group in the absence of Whitlow. But you look at Joey Gatewood, he kind of steps in and mixes in with Bo Nix at the quarterback position to play a part in all that. So, again, it's going to be more by committee, more so than anything else. But don't sleep on the LSU defense in stopping the run. You know, this is the number one rush offense as far as Auburn in the SEC, going up against the number 2 rush defense. LSU can get it done up front. So they're going to force this game to be on Bo Nix's shoulders and for him to be able to play through the air and see if he can beat him. And we talked about this earlier in the week. Bo Nix has not played good football on the road this season. Neutral sites or on the road, he's really struggled. That's where all his interceptions have come from. So this could be a tough spot for Bo Nix if he does have to carry the team through the air, having to play in Death Valley.
All right, let's welcome into the conversation Gary Danielson, who will have the call, the SEC on CBS here on Saturday. And let's just piggyback off of that notion with Bo Nix, Gary. Look, they are an 11.5-point underdog. And when asked about that, Bo Nix said, quote, "What do you expect? You're at Auburn and nobody really ever gives you any kind of advantage." So what kind of game does Bo Nix need to have for Auburn to keep this one close or even pull off the upset over in Death Valley?
Well, you got to earn that respect. In this league, when you go on the road against Florida and your quarterback does not play well, it looks like that every time Gus Malzahn called on him to do things from the pocket, he struggled. He struggled with pressure in his face, and he struggled to find receivers. He had open passes that could have produced points, and they could have won that game if they got better play. I will say this. There has been growth. I've watched him, continue to get better every week. That was a tough position playing on Florida. There's no shortcuts in this league. Experience is, you can't buy it. You've got to live it. We actually saw that, Monday night when Sam Darnold was trying to learn on the go against one of the best coaches in pro football, Bill Belichick. It's the same way in this league. You're facing NFL talent, highly paid coordinators, and there's no shortcuts. I think he's improving. We'll see if it's enough to handle a good LSU team, because the point with this LSU team is they now are going to put points on the board. You're not going to beat this team 13-10. You're going to have to get high 20s or probably in the 30s to beat them.
And so Bo Nix will go up against an LSU defense that forced 3 turnovers at Mississippi State. You got Jacoby Stevens named co-SEC Player of the Week. I know we always focus, at least this season, on the offense and Joe Burrow, I should say. What stands out to you about what you saw defensively from the LSU Tigers?
Speed and flexibility in their back 7. You know, we know what they have inside. They've got some pluggers, Rashard Lawrence, Glenn Logan. In the middle, they're kind of just gap control guys. But their back 8 players are very interchangeable. Safeties that can rush the passer, and Stevens and Delpit. Linebackers that can go back and drop in pass coverage. Corners that can tackle from the secondary. They've got a lot of different looks that this defense and Dave Aranda can throw at you. Against Florida, in 10 consecutive possessions by Florida, Dave Aranda showed Kyle Trask 7 different looks with substitutions and fronts. Every time he got the ball, it was a different look. Now, Trask handled it. He put points on the board. That'll be the question is, can this Auburn offense, with Gus calling plays, a healthy Anthony Schwartz at flanker, can they give this LSU defense enough off balance to handle the flexibility that they have in this defense at LSU?
All right, those are one of the keys that you're looking out for in terms of Saturday's game. And Gary, you know, Auburn's loss at home last year, Cole Tracy with the game-winning field goal at the gun, and then 2 years ago they had a 20-0 lead in Baton Rouge. What, in addition to what you've already laid out, is sort of the big question mark that you have heading into this game that you hope to learn in this game between both Tiger teams here?
I think they have to play it that's going to be a fourth quarter game. That's been the storyline in these games. And Auburn has to find a way, and I think it's a little bit on Gus Malzahn. I really didn't like the way he put his freshman quarterback in a lot of tough situations where I thought he either should have punted or kicked field goals. He was trying to do too much with his quarterback. He didn't bring in Joey Gatewood to give the defense different looks. I wonder if Gus will grow in his play calling as he's gotten more comfortable with Bo Nix, Joey Gatewood, and his emerging players this year, which is a completely different team when he had Jarrett Stidham a year ago.
Our thanks to Gary Danielson joining us here for the SEC on CBS Super Preview. Gary, thank you so much joining us weekly as he always does. This is the start of a great string of games here on the SEC on CBS. Yes, a top 10 matchup. You got Auburn and LSU, then Georgia and Florida, and then LSU and Alabama November 9th. Again, all games starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And for more on this top 10 matchup here between two Tigers, 3 players to watch in this game. We welcome in Barton Simmons joining us here. And Barton, let's start with an LSU wide receiver who missed the last 3 games with a foot injury, suffered at Vandy, potentially, we think, coming back here.
Yeah, Terrace Marshall, a former 5-star, one of the 3-headed monster there in that LSU wide receiving group. And why I think he's so important here is when you look at last week when Mississippi State and defensive coordinator Bob Shoop were able to hold LSU to their lowest point total of the season. One of the keys to that was Mississippi State forcing field goals in the red zone. LSU had to settle a couple times. They weren't used to doing that. Well, enter Terrace Marshall, who's been, when he's been healthy, has been absolutely dynamic and dominant in the red zone. He's racked up touchdowns, even with his limited snaps and games this season, still among the leaders on that team in touchdowns. It's because of his big body, the frame he can use to go up and get the ball and be a big target in the red zone. And so I think for LSU to continue to play well, and frankly for Auburn to limit LSU, that red zone battle is going to be key. And I think that's where Terrace Marshall's return is really going to help the Tigers.
And that's a look at one of the LSU Tigers from a skill position. What about one of his teammates, one of the big fellas up front?
Yeah, look, I think Sadiq Charles, the offensive lineman, left tackle for LSU, is really critical here. This is a kid that served a suspension this year. He's only playing in situational spots, playing in only 6 games all year. This is obviously one of those games he's going to play in. And the reason for that is because he's got to neutralize that offensive or that defensive line for Auburn. Ed Orgeron said in his press conference this week, look, we know how good this Auburn team is, but we are what we are offensively. We are going to block those guys one-on-one. We want to get 5 guys out into pass routes. We're going to trust our offensive line to man up on that Auburn defensive front. That's a big task with Marlon Davidson And Nick Coe potentially having a breakout game this week. Derek Brown, one of the top prospects in the country. That's a heavy load there that those guys have to deal with. But I think Sadiq Charles, with his return to this game, is going to be really critical in LSU's ability to handle that. Whoever wins that matchup, and you could throw any of those LSU offensive linemen in there. Lloyd Cushenberry, their center, is going to be huge this game as well. But whoever wins those one-on-one battles, or at least gets the majority of those W's, is going to go a long way to deciding who wins this football game.
All right, that's a look at a couple of LSU players. How about on the other side with Auburn? Which player is catching your eye this weekend?
I mean, obviously, you go a lot of different directions. For me, when you're talking about defending LSU, you look to the defensive backfield. Noah Igbenogany is, I think, one of the most critical players in this game because he plays cornerback. He's a former wide receiver. And this is a kid that I think has got to find a way to make a play on the football. He's a big-body kid, and he's got to find a way to turn this team over. No one's turning Joe Burrow over consistently. He's not given many opportunities to do it. But Igbenogany is the type of player that I think can make those big plays. And I think to beat LSU, it's all about limiting that offense and giving your offense extra possessions. For Auburn, they're going to need to possess the football offensively. They're going to need to find a couple extra possessions along the way. And I think that's where Igbenogany comes in that secondary, make a couple plays on the ball, perhaps get an interception, turn this team over, because Joe Burrow's going to throw it around, and he doesn't care who's covering who. And so I think capitalizing on one of those opportunities, getting an interception, that's going to be almost a prerequisite for this Auburn team winning.
3 players to know in the Auburn-LSU game with Barton Simmons. Barton, certainly appreciate it. Catch him on the Cover 3 podcast and our CBS Sports family of podcasts. Appreciate it, bud. All right, let's welcome in Sportsline expert Tim Doyle with a look at a pick against the spread or the total here. So, again, we do this every week, Tim. When you look at this particular game, what's the play for you?
I like Auburn here. On the season, 6-1 against the spread. Their only loss was down in Florida when Bo Nix looked like, well, a freshman, where he threw 3 interceptions in that game. Auburn could score and score in bunches. 51 last week against Arkansas. 3 weeks ago, they scored 56 against Mississippi State. And this isn't your mother, your father's LSU squad. Like, this is an LSU squad that wants to go up and down, that gave up 38 points to Vandy. I mean, you remember the days when, like, LSU would just be, like, praying for a quarterback? Well, they have that now. They have Joe Burrow, who's your favorite to win the Heisman. I think there's going to be a ton of points in this game, but I do believe Auburn's going to be able to score. I think LSU is getting a little bit overvalued the way they've just kind of beat up on opponents. And Mississippi State has a tough time scoring against anybody, for crying out loud. So you're going to give me 10.5 points? I think this could go to 10 or 9.5. I'm going to lock in right now. Not only did I get that touchdown and a field goal, Tommy and Brady get that little half just hurts so bad sometimes. I'm going to hold on to that little half for dear life.
And that little half, that little half, the hook, it means everything in this. If this game was sitting somewhere at 9.5, 10, I'd feel more confident taking LSU. But to Tim's point, I do think Auburn can score with LSU to some degree and keep this close. This isn't the same LSU defense we've seen in the past. They're giving up more big plays than what we had thought. The rush defense has been solid so far this year, and that we knew that was a strength coming into it versus an Auburn team that can run the football well. However, they're not doing a great job of getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So unless Bo Nix has another freshman moment like he did in Gainesville, I could see Auburn hanging around in this one. I actually would say if I had to lean on a bet here, I'd be more confident in the over. Both teams scoring a bunch given LSU's track record and what we can see from Auburn. I would feel more confident in that bet. And Tim, again, you had alluded to it just a little bit. You kind of like the over there, but last week it was something you really liked. What's preventing you from really enjoying and saying, what, I want to lay the points here and taking the over in this? Where's the hammer, Tim? Where's the hammer?
No hammer here, all right? Well, it's just simple math, right? LSU is averaging a 50 burger, and Auburn's averaging 36. Hello, I went to Northwestern. That would be 86 combined points. So all they got to do is score over 60 in this game, and you're a winner. You know, my fear is Bo Nix kind of reverts back to what happened against Florida. I don't think LSU's defense, and Brady would know this better than me, is as talented, as dynamic, as fast as a Florida team. Florida's been turning over everybody. This kid's going to be a sensation this year, but I just hope he doesn't get caught up in the hype. Like, there's so many times when I've stepped on the floor and you go up against a big name, and right now he's going up against the Heisman favorite, and you try to prove yourself. Like, don't try to do too much in this game. Still, Auburn needs to have that balance and lean on the run first and then let their freshmen go out there and make plays. Easier said than done. I'm sure many times Brady took the field. He goes, I'm going to show this quarterback that I'm just as good as him. It's like, don't do that, freshman. So I think that the over is a safe play, but I really like Auburn in this game. I think they're going to be able to score and go up and down the field.
And again, I think that's the big question if you're going to back Auburn, right, is the faith in Bo Nix. And I think, look, I went against them in the Texas A&M game, and he showed a lot at Kyle Field. They silenced the 12th man. But then Tim references the Florida game where he did struggle. Now he bounced back against Arkansas. So when you look at a young quarterback right now, do we know enough about Bo Nix to know anticipate how he'll going to play on the road in a really hostile environment?
You can throw out the Arkansas game, okay? Everyone's kind of bounced back and looked good versus Arkansas this year. That's just where that program's at. I think a better indication is what we saw from him down in Gainesville versus that Florida defense, who's really good at getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. We saw that, and that usually comes and generates turnovers. And he just struggled to throw the football. And I think that's been the one thing that stood out so far this year is his home-road splits. They're struggling to find any production in the passing game whatsoever. So when you look at this matchup, obviously they're going to be very aware of Seth Williams on the outside. I think Anthony Schwartz is the guy who got on track last week, 6 receptions, had a touchdown as well. He's their speedster. He's a guy to keep an eye on this matchup if they want to take the top off of the LSU defense. That would be a guy that I think they might try to work in and go to in a variety of ways, too, to get him going. Maybe that helps Bo Nix gain some confidence. But as Tim's talked about, as we've been talking about, if they can't run the football, that's a wrap. They're not going to be able to hang with this LSU offense because even as good as that Auburn defense is, to me, it's too big of a challenge. And this Auburn defense has struggled to generate turnovers. So far, only 3 interceptions this year. Joe Burrow doesn't really turn over the football. Those 3 interceptions for the Auburn defense, that's tied for the worst in the SEC. So that could be a big-time issue. You've got to steal possessions versus a high-scoring offense, and I just don't see Auburn's defense being able to do that versus LSU.
One final thought, Tim Doyle, before we let you go. One final thought on this game, sir.
I found my hammer, Brady. So hammer Auburn. Difference here.
All right, Tim Doyle joining us, our Sportsline expert with the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Tim, certainly appreciate it. And Brady, now that we have a little bit more time as we wrap things up here, again, this is a string of SEC on CBS games where we have 3 ranked matchups in a row. And yes, it's going to be the Georgia and the Florida game, and that's sort of the SEC East. But really, all eyes are going to be on November 9th right now, right? And so you have a potential situation here where both teams will have the extra week off. And it's a big assumption if LSU is going to get through. But for argument's sake, let's say that they do. Set up this matchup for us, LSU and Alabama.
Well, it all comes down to Tua. Is Tua Tagovailoa healthy? Can he get back after the surgery? He did it in 28 days last year after the SEC championship game to get to the semifinal game versus Oklahoma. He's going to try to do it now in 21 or maybe even a little bit less than that when you factor in the fact he had surgery the next day after the game. So that's going to be the biggest question. They're talking like that may be an actual possibility. If he is able to come back, I would imagine he'd be somewhat limited as far as his mobility. Now, he can tear you apart from the pocket, but what makes him special is his ability to improvise, buy time, and then make some of those big throws down the field. And if he can't do that, you wonder if that then provides an even playing field for LSU, even though they're on the road in Tuscaloosa. So it should be a heck of a ball game. I don't know that we've seen either defense play as well what we're accustomed to seeing. Like, this is an exact opposite of what we saw back in the day, where it'd be those 9-6, 3 yards and a cloud of dust type games. That one could be a game where we see both teams scoring in the 40s, maybe even creeping up in the 50.
Are you ready for conspiracy time?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So obviously there's a conversation, I think, maybe publicly, maybe not, about whether Nick Saban should actually hold Tua Tagovailoa. And let's just say that they lose to an LSU team that's ranked 2nd in the country, could be actually number 1 by the time they face each other in 3 weeks' time. So if you lose, if you're Nick Saban, you say you lose.
I know what you're saying here. I know where you're going.
Okay, so you lose the game without Tua, and you say, I didn't have my quarterback. You get him back eventually healthy. You're on the table. It gets you a little bit better there. What do you think there? Because that means, though, you ultimately don't get to an SEC championship.
You're losing the division, so your play there would be like, all right, well, we don't have to play an extra game and worry about risking him or our team losing, but we're still going to get in as one of the top 4 teams. It's a sound conspiracy theory. It makes sense. There's a lot of risk there. Because if all of a sudden you look at what the landscape is of college football, I think Oklahoma, especially if they're undefeated, they're getting in as one of the top 4. If Clemson runs the ACC, they're getting in as one of the top 4. And then you're looking at Ohio State. They might run the table. They could be undefeated. They get in as one of the top 4. There's only one spot left. Are you going to leave out an LSU team that might be, looking at, potentially being, in this case, undefeated and getting in? Of course not. There won't be enough spots for you. So you got to control your destiny while you've got it. If you can win that game, you got to win it. No way they would hold him out from that game unless he's not 100%, and they'd be putting him at risk. All right, no disrespect to Auburn, so let's finish on them before we have to wrap things up. If they win this game, then they have a shot because of the Iron Bowl at the end of the year with Bama, and we anticipate Tua, whether or not, but you never know. If Auburn's able to win this out, set the table for me, the chances that they can get there and potentially crash the CFP party. I'm going to say it right now. If Auburn could find a way of getting in, even if they lost one of these games, but it still worked out where they could actually get into the conference championship game, which it would be hard to do. They need a lot of things to work their way. Given how tough their schedule was in that win over Oregon, who could very well win the Pac-12, they might be the first team ever as a 2-loss champion to make it into the playoff if all those things played out. Now, again, they would need a bunch of other teams to start losing and for that to be the case. But definitely as a 1-loss conference champ, with this schedule that they're playing, there's no doubt in my mind they would be able to make it in. So Auburn, look, because of the slate they've got ahead of them, I don't think it's going to happen, but if they did, I mean, they would have been one of the most tested teams we've ever seen in the college football playoff era. Yeah, if they're able to win, can't argue with the schedule and the teams that they beat. Again, a big if. That's why this game is so big. Our thanks to Brady Quinn, also Tim Doyle, Barton Simmons, and Gary Danielson here. It's the SEC on CBS, Auburn and LSU, top 10 matchup. That'll do it for us now. Let's send it up to Stamford, Connecticut. Sportsline with Eric Casillas.